to you by Grow Generation. Today's episode of the Cantina is, whether on Dagobah or Tatooine you are, everything you need to grow right where you are, they have. Later in the episode, more on them you will hear.
Welcome to a galaxy far, far away. Here at the Cantina podcast, we provide top shelf service, including rumors, leaks, news, and reviews. Come in, order a Loman Ale, and remember, no droids allowed. All right, man. I think we are all set, and I'm pretty certain I know at least what we're gonna start off with talking about. Oh man.
I think there's a couple of things to talk about, definitely.
Yeah. With
a couple of things that come out sort of yesterday, today.
Yeah. So with that being said, welcome everybody back to the Cantina. Grab a seat, get a drink. If you snuck your droids in, I'm going to blast you in the face. No, it's not that type of joint. All right, droids are allowed. Droids are cool. Okay, I don't need no crazy droid revolution on my hands. Funny story though. From the old EU, did you ever read like any of the comics that dealt with like the droid rebellion and like when 3PO had a existential crisis during the Vong invasion and shit like that?
No, I think that was after I had given up.
Yeah, man, they did some crazy stuff with the droids eventually, because that is one thing about Star Wars that they don't really explore too much. They tried to in Solo, but not necessarily well. But that's the whole idea of sentient thinking machines that don't feel, but they can think. And how can you think without feeling? Well, you can't, as we learn much later when 3PO realizes, the Vong hate technologies so much that even though he could be destroyed and backed up right now, that the Vong could destroy him and all the backups, and he would never come back. And he freaks out about it. It's interesting because we're the only.
Does he say, "I would like to take one last look at my friends who I only met 10 minutes ago"?
No, at this point he had actually spent,
who are you all?
30 years with these people.
Where's Master Luke?
But the interesting thing about that is, while it's way out there, far EU stuff though, it's a human thing, because we're the only creatures that we know of that understand our mortality. We are going to die. That's going to happen. It's 100% as of now inevitable, right? No other animal that we know of has to face that fact. And it was kind of cool to see Star Wars get to explore that. Explore someone realizing that for the first time, So, yeah, that's...
I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's something that they could have done more within the kind of current canon of the story, I suppose. I didn't particularly like the way they did it in Solo either. It was like, hey, I'm going to start a rebellion, but let's just do it for comedy purposes, And I didn't feel at the right place for it. But, in another universe somewhere, it could have been something that they dealt with as a theme, especially the way, the droids are ultimately the enemies of the prequels. It might have been kind of a nice angle to take about, some change in the way that droids are treated after that, because they're basically used as this tool of war. And you get the feeling, in the old trilogy, well, obviously at the time it wasn't designed that way, but they tried to link it up as that's why people don't like droids so much, and they kind of capitalise on that in Mandalorian, because they put, obviously, Din Djarin in that situation where his entire family were killed in a separatist attack, and he just doesn't like droids. But they play with that, mostly in season 1, of course. And I like that. So yeah, there is territory there that could be explored further, and probably something like a show, something like Mando, that can take a bit more time to do something a bit more. Take a character and explore that character for a little while, like a droid or something like that. It could work. That's something that they could do in the future.
It's funny because there was a Q&A session with George Lucas at a school, and he was asked a question. It dealt more with like contemporary politics and diversity, and he kind of went off on something Lucasfilm probably really didn't like him saying, which was basically like, that's not what Star Wars is about, that's not what I was writing about. But there was this thing with the droids and their enslavement to humans, but we hadn't gotten there yet. So that idea of the droids having more to them was at least according to him now or in the last few years in his mind. So that's what was great about
that could have been a fun basis for a sequel trilogy almost, that instead of going with a Sith route and a sequel trilogy that was done 20 years ago, not the age they were now, which I don't think you could have done it then, but something they could have done at the time was like having droids being the threat again, but it being a cause that Luke struggles with, because he actually takes the point of view and how reliant people become on the droids and the tech that they take for granted in that universe. But I don't know if it is the right place to do that.
No, the books
in
were.
Movies, I don't think you've got the time for it, but in a show where I'd watch that about a droid that kind of I would watch a show starring a droid, because droids can have a personality in Star Wars. They can also just be gonks, like gonk, gonk, but they are the mouse droids. But likes the 3PO, some other droids can have a bit more personality about them at times. Depending on kind of how they're programmed, etc. Because that'd be something that would interest me, following a droid saying, why I want to be kind of free, if you like, I want to break my programming and just go off and be someone, and then what do I do with my life then? What I mean? I don't need food, I don't need, and just kind of, and maybe making a friend with someone, and that could be a kind of fun concept to explore in Disney Plus or something like that, I think.
Yeah, I with Disney Plus, absolutely, and even animation, as long as it's not kiddish, just and what I mean by kiddish,
for that thing, I'd prefer live action.
I would too. I would too.
Think animated's right.
But if I saw a good anime, like a Powerhouse style animation, their ability, their diversity between Castlevania and He-Man alone shows that. I'll give them any property and have faith in Powerhouse, but
I prefer
live action
the whole
would be realistic
animation
to do.
Well, live action I think would be really good, because that would be the challenge of it almost. Can you make a show where the main character is a droid and people still love him and want to watch him every week? Can you do that? That'd almost be like the challenge I'd be trying to kind of achieve at that point. And live action, I just think animation would be too easy to do that, because it's just a voice actor, ultimately.
I can agree.
Putting all that together into a performance is a different thing.
I can absolutely agree. And the cool thing is with Disney Plus and the idea of Star Wars TV shows, that old EU feel is more possible. And what I mean is those types of side stories, those non-Skywalker Jedi Sith
you're writing
stories.
a novel. I mean, one novel's like a 6-7 episode hour long series.
Exactly.
Well, I'm thinking more adult novels.
Yeah.
I think to be honest, when I enjoyed the Star Wars novels the most when I was at that age where, I wasn't yet an adult, but I was kind of teetering on the edge, and they were the kind of perfect length because it was something I was interested in. I could read them without getting sort of too bored down.
550 page paperbacks. Yeah.
I felt as I kind of got older, what excited me to read was something, to engage me more in a book. I needed to be challenged more. I needed something a bit more adult, and my taste changed as a result. And I think that was part of the reason why I went off the EU as well, because there wasn't any books out there that were like really dark or really, taking things in a different direction. It was all fun. I mean, if you like, and I just think there's only so much of that you can take in book format for me anyway, whereas I could take it all day long in a TV or a film format. But sometimes when I'm reading a book, I want to get dragged into it just a little bit more, and to get to use my imagination.
Yeah, I can respect that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. With that, let's transition to a plan.
Where are we going first?
Let's transition with a plan.
We're going for a plan.
Yeah. Let's go with a plan. When we start the show, oftentimes we do have a plan. We text ahead of time on Slack. Hey, these are the big topics.
Always, sometimes
but not always. But usually, if there's not a preset.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a script. Yeah. We don't know what we're going to talk about. We just say, like, here's a story,
exactly.
and then we should cover this today.
We've got a loose idea, even some would say. Like, we at least know where we want to go.
It's not quite sort of Daily Cog, or as I used to come on when it was LIM mornings, where we didn't know what we were going to talk about till we started, talking, and then it was just to see where it went. Not quite that. No.
So, something everyone has known. We've had actors come out and say the words that I'm about to say. There's been a fight over whether or not the sequel trilogy had a plan, and people that usually are big defenders of The Last Jedi would say, oh, there was a plan until Abrams threw it out the window in Rise of Skywalker.
I think, and again, the evidence of Colin Trevorrow's script and how completely different it was, and that they didn't want that, I think tells us that wasn't the case.
And conversations with Ridley and Boyega and Driver.
I mean that's just the kind of first thing, and then we have obviously when we know that Ian McDiarmid was first contacted to come back as Palpatine, when that, and yes, we've heard from people that the idea of the Emperor coming back, I think, might have been mentioned by Abrams at some point while they were making the first one, but there was nothing sort of set in stone as here's the guideline where we're going to follow. Rian Johnson had no concept of any ideas to bring back Palpatine or anything like that. He doesn't know anything about that when he makes his movie, which he writes based on what he knows from The Force Awakens, and it gets approved by Lucasfilm, who say, we love this, go and make it.
Because that's when...
And at the time, Abrams, I remember saying, I don't know whether he was just lying at the time, but said, when I read the script for The Last Jedi, I felt jealous because I wanted to make it.
Right.
Then, he does such a retcon job, which to me was him reacting to what people were saying about The Last Jedi and trying to fix it. That's what he was trying to do in that last film, and I think that's where it does go completely off the rails, even for the people that loved The Last Jedi. The last one does go off the rails. Like we were talking to Nick and Jammer about this, and they both love The Last Jedi, but Nick just can't love it anymore because it was finished so badly. Jammer can still love that film, but he doesn't like The Rise of Skywalker. So, and then you have people like us who kind of had already maybe turned off a little bit more by that point anyway. Certainly me. I know you were kind of maybe slightly more on the fence than I was at some points, but Yeah. And so what Abrams, he gave an interview and he was talking about, having a plan versus not having a plan, and how that affects things. And basically, what he said was that he, in his opinion, although sometimes the best things come from having no plan, it's better to have one, even if you have to change it along the way, kind of thing. Even if you have to change it because you feel something is working, that's okay, but at least you've got your plan that you're still kind of following towards. And while he doesn't directly kind of say it at any point, it kind of feels like he's talking about the Star Wars trilogy, and the fact that, of when he started it, he, as far as he knew, he was just doing that one film. He was just setting up a mystery box, and other people's job was to finish it. So when he get brought back in to finish it,
on that, let's remember that he did allegedly, and I believe he said himself that he did a treatment for his whole idea, like his idea of where the
I don't know if it was. I don't even know if I'd call that treatment.
I think that was
he gave
the
some
term that
notes
he used, but it at least there was allegedly a path that he had said, this is where I see it going. That's it. And I do just want to. I'm not trying to protect him, nor am I trying to throw Johnson under the bus either. I just want the full picture out there,
Oh, yeah, and even then, it's still Johnson ultimately still scripts.
Yep.
Sends it to Lucasfilm,
and they still approve it, no matter what.
That's ultimately
exactly.
their decision. They could have said, "Well, we kind of like the JJ's. Can you, you're not really setting us up for that one." But as far as Rian Johnson was concerned, he was just setting up what he saw as possibilities of where they could go next, things that he thought were interesting paths that they could take next. And what Rise of Skywalker doesn't really do is follow on from that in any way. It almost feels like Abrams goes back to what his ideas were, and it almost feels like it's a follow on from The Force Awakens itself rather than The Last Jedi. But what I think is really interesting about this is also that ultimately that lack of a plan, a big responsibility of that falls onto Abrams in the first place, because they did have an outline there. Mm-hmm. And Bob Iger is quoted as saying that when they brought J.J. Abrams on board, it was his decision to throw out Lucas's outline, and that Lucas was pissed when Iger told him that was the case.
Care for what they were wanting to do.
I mean, that's because you've heard one little snippet which somebody's released, and it kind of feels like that was almost the thing to say to kind of turn people off it. Ultimately, if we look at Lucas's career, outlines are the only thing he does pretty well. The outline he had for the prequel trilogy was good. The outline that he kind of put forward for the original trilogy was good, but better writers come in the original trilogy and turned that into something. That didn't happen with the prequel trilogy because he took too much of it on himself, and what we were just left was his wooden clunkiness, which probably would have been the same way the old trilogy went if it wasn't for better writers just being involved, people and producers as well, because you don't forget how important Gary Kurtz was in that process. And Kurtz and Kasdan were the people really missing from that prequel trilogy. But what had happened after that is Lucas had all this praise and all the money, and it was like he had done it all himself. And I don't think Kasdan and Kurtz really kind of were all big fans of Lucas at that point. They, like Kasdan's come back to watch the Star Wars since Lucas left. I just don't think he really gets on with him very well, and I don't think Gary Kurtz did either at that point. So that was never going to happen. But ultimately, that's like, it's like taking, I'll talk about my favourite band, Led Zeppelin, one of the most celebrated bands in the world, and it's like taking, Jimmy Page out, and he says, well, I don't need you guys anymore, I'm going to start my own band. And it might be okay, but it's not Led Zeppelin anymore, and that's ultimately what that team was missing from those movies. But I think still, you know, even if Lucas's plan wasn't, you know, they didn't like it, you know, overall, the general theme of it, they should have adapted that and come up with their own, you know, version of it that was an outline again that they were happy with, you know, before they started the scripting process for The Force Awakens. And then it's okay to bring in a new writer and it's okay to bring in a new director and everything like that, as long as they have an outline and say, well, look, you understand that how we get there is kind of up to you, but this is an end point we need to hit. So these two characters need to be at this kind of point at the end. That's the point of this trilogy, if you like. The theme of it is this. Can you work with that? And you're only going to hire somebody that says, yeah, I can work with that, you know, in the first place. And so, you know, it's great for Abrams to talk about not having a plan, but I think he's as guilty as Iger, Kennedy, anybody else that was involved in that. And I think, especially when it comes to that final movie, which, you know, he didn't have to come back for. You know, they've probably delivered a truckload of cash to his front door and said, you know, you coming back? And he's went, okay, you know. So he's took on the responsibility, and whether it was mandated from Disney or it was his idea, he's went in a direction that didn't work for what had came before it. That's all it is. It just didn't work for what had came before it, and it therefore doesn't feel like one story. It just and the worst thing he did, I don't think he intended to do this, but by doing what he did, he made the original trilogy worse.
I agree.
Which is the crime that you cannot accept with this, you know, because what he said is that's not the ending anymore. What you believed to be the climax of this series no longer is. This is actually about Palpatine, and he survived, and he had a granddaughter, and, you know, and all of that sort of stuff. It doesn't really follow on from what those first 6 episodes are about, which was Anakin's story, and the absence of Anakin in that sequel trilogy is staggering. How can you have a one story that's set and there's one main character to that story, and then he just doesn't appear in the last third of the book, if you were writing a book, for example, or a series of books, and that your lead character's just not there by the end? It just wouldn't make much sense, you know, especially in a universe where you can bring people back as voices. You can bring, you know, if they didn't want to show Hayden Christensen because they didn't, do we make him young, do we make him old, they could have just did the voice, you know. Hayden's voice would have been enough, you know. We would have recognised him, you know, that's Hayden's voice. That's fine, because we've never heard Anakin talk to Luke through the Force shit on screen at any point, so to use Hayden's voice is absolutely fine. That's one way they could have got away with it.
Yeah, I agree. I do want to defend my point against the Lucas story in its entirety, based solely on the midichlorian thing, not just on the potential. This is why, for me personally, for me, the Force is and should be the all mystical magical thing that hold on. I know. Hold on. I know what happens in the cartoons, right? I couldn't stand what Lucas did with just the prequel movies. I understand that they go into it deeper and they re-spiritualize it in a way at a microscopic level, but science can
very much so in the Clone Wars and stuff like that. It doesn't feel like
still
some DNA thing. It doesn't.
Still took
after you watch that
so much out of it for me, and because I can't.
Do you know, all midichlorians are right,
because I couldn't get into the Clone Wars because I hated the prequels, and I didn't have a young kid at that time for me to get into it. I've never had that moment where I'm like, oh, okay, I can accept it. So yeah, from the get go, looking at just the previous 6 live action films, I would never want to visit the micro world of the midichlorians. Now, if I had been able to experience things the way you did, I might feel differently.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing, and I still think, from your point of view, you should just, it's. I mean, let's face it, it's not as if you've got a full-time job at the moment. You're retired. Do you know what I mean? You can watch the Clone Wars.
Dude, I put out 9 podcasts a week.
Right. Let's compare that to me, who also holds down a full-time job at the same time. If you want to start. Now, anyway.
All the content I have to watch for this? Oh my goodness.
I mean, that's true, though. That's true. That is true, because I don't have to watch things unless it's something, that I'm specifically booked to go on, or it interests me in the first place, and I want to write about it. Like the stuff you would have been watching
our
anyway.
upcoming war film review for D-Day anniversary, when we'll be talking Saving Private Ryan. And
we're going to talk about some war movies, because we like war movies, although you're a much bigger war movie fan than I am, so I'm going to be learning some stuff, because I'm going to see some films that I've actually never watched before.
Indeed, we're going to right after on this tangent, and we'll use this since we're going from Star Wars on this tangent to go to our advertisers, but to advertise this new podcast, we're doing the D-Day anniversary Operation Overlord with Saving Private Ryan, a movie known worldwide, war dealing with worldwide consequences. And then the next month Cam will get some American history lessons with Gettysburg, because that'll be the anniversary for that battle. And then Cam's gonna get to pick a war movie for us to go with. So it'll be a lot of fun. We'll see how everyone enjoys it, and if you guys like the first 3 or so,
we should cover. Actually, I've just thought of something. We should actually cover Braveheart at some point as a war movie, because it's a war movie as well.
It is, absolutely.
It's just a war movie before they invented.
Did you see the Bruce Robert the Bruce's movie? I can't. Was it on Netflix?
The one with Chris Pine in it.
So yeah,
I haven't seen it. No,
neither have I
yet.
yet.
I watched a little, 10 minutes of it, and I just didn't like his accent or anything like that, even though everybody was saying how great it was. I couldn't watch any more after that. I just think, it's such a hard accent to pull off. And actually, Mel Gibson done a really good job of it in that movie. But we better get back to our sponsors and then on to Star Wars, because people will be like, I didn't come here.
Exactly. Here's the ad from our awesome sponsors over at Grow Generation. Take it away, guys.
Grow Generation, where the pros go to grow. The Grow Generation commercial team is armed with industry-leading professional consultants. Grow Generation's team will help you fully manage any size or scale project. They offer turnkey facility designs, cultivation room design, and on-site project consultation. Go to www.growgeneration.com, where the pros go to grow.
All right, thanks so much, Cam. The whole plan thing, it's something we've all known. It's time to move on from the sequel trilogy, isn't it?
We were talking about this. It's the only thing you can do. You've got 2 choices, right? This is your 2 choices. Accept that shit is canon, and just hope it gets better from here on out, or you're done with Star Wars. Yeah, that's it. You're done with it, and be done with it. Then don't come back and moan about every single thing that happens, because if you've made that conscious decision that they can't come back from this, then what's the point? Now, that, I suppose, again, just talking about the people that we've spoken to, that's kind of where Nick is at the moment, and he's like, I'm not interested in Star Wars anymore, and that's fine. He doesn't have to watch any of the stuff. I think he has watched Mando, but that's his choice at the end of the day. But he's certainly not going to be rushing it to watch any of the movies or anything. Whereas kind of you, me, and obviously Jammer that we're talking about are kind of more like, well, let's hope things get better from here on out, because that's all you can kind of do. But I was kind of in the same place as Nick before Mando. Do you know what I mean? Mando is what kind of got me back again, because I really, even though I had some criticisms about season 1, it ended really, really well, and I thought season 2 was fantastic. And that I try to get back up, but they suck me back in. And that ultimately, that's what it is. I start watching it, I go, I'm interested in this, and when you're interested in it, you want to write about it, you want to speculate about it, and boom, you're back in the well again, and you're like, hey, I'm Star Wars fan. But I'm never going to change my mind on those sequel trilogies. That's just not going to happen. Same as you're never going to suddenly start liking the prequels. No. And I shouldn't say like that in case people don't listen to us and they think, oh, Cam must be a prequel lover.
No,
I'm not. Well, if you feel free to go back and check our reviews of all the Star Wars movies. Neither is like, apart from a few bits that we'd say we like this bit or we like that moment. We were not either of us fans of the prequel trilogy, but I am a fan of where they went in the Clone Wars animated show, which Kyle hasn't seen. So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing else more to say. Abrams was talking about it, which makes it newsworthy because it brings up that discussion again, so we have to cover it. But we all know there was no plan, and that was the big failing of that sequel trilogy, and nothing's going to change that now.
And the only thing...
so we just have to move on.
The only thing that will ever change the sequel trilogy, and it's going to remain canon. I'm sorry, Justin, Mike... And what's the other guy? Doomcock or whatever the fuck. Even if they multiverse it, even if they use that world of time, worlds between walls or whatever the fuck, it's still fucking canon. Suck it up. Drive on.
We don't like it either. But,
exactly, but they can.
You have to do one of the two things I said. Either give up and Star Wars, which these people won't do because you make your career out of Star Wars, or you have to accept that. Just wait and see what they do and judge each thing as it comes out. And that's all we do.
One thing that can make it maybe suck a little less, kind of like the Clone Wars making Rise but Revenge of the Sith suck a little less, is by adding the relationship you needed between Obi-Wan and Anakin. We could see
doesn't turn it into a good film.
It doesn't make it a good film, but it could help the story.
It makes you more appreciative of the era and what they were really trying to do and they never quite pulled off. Exactly. I think it would be the best way to put it. And if they can make the sequel trilogy better by setting it up better using all these shows, I am all for it because it still is canon, but I'm never going to like those movies. And talking about weird things about Star Wars, I covered the story today, which I don't think I would ever thought I would be typing these words. And I titled it Zack Snyder's Star Wars. As a play on Zack Snyder's Justice League. You thought you liked Zack Snyder's Justice League. Well, wait till you hear this. It's Zack Snyder's Star Wars. So apparently, this is back, so we're going back to sort of really 2012 here. So that's about the time he started making Man of Steel, 2013. So this is kind of prior to that he tries to have a conversation with Lucasfilm and he wants them to let him. This is before the kind of Disney things all gone through. It's probably one of the reasons that never went anywhere, actually, because that all ended up coming out. But he had went to Lucasfilm and he had said, basically, give me the keys to Star Wars, I want to take it for a drive. And he had this idea to do, and we don't know anything about this other than a really old rumour, which might have been shit at the time, so I'll mention it. But all Snyder said was it would be Kurosawa inspired, and it was a movie he thought was a really good idea, so much so that he's kind of percolated on it and he's still got it, and now he's kind of what he's working on now is un-Star Warsifying it, if you like, and just doing his own thing with that story in his own universe, to kind of get that story out there, if you like, without having to kind of go through the whole Disney Star Wars thing, because that ain't happening, you know.
Yeah.
There ain't no way Lucasfilm's hiring Zack Snyder. Just forget about it. And you know, some of those, you know, 12 or 15 Snyder fanatics will be like, oh my god, Zack Snyder Star Wars sounds like the greatest thing of all time. You know, it would be probably a 5-hour bleak fest full of slow motion shots, and it would look really good, like when you had to take a screenshot of it, like for the background in your computer, it'll look cool as fuck, because that's what he's good at. But you know, it'll be too long and too dull, and he'll deconstruct everything. But you know, the rumour was something to do with Yoda in the young days. It was going to be something set back in the past with Yoda as a younger character. Now, I mean, that sounds horrible, but really, it's hard to connect that rumour with this legitimately, because really we don't have enough information. That could have been just, I mean, you see it every day, whereas something comes out and somebody makes up a rumour about it. I'm not going to mention any names of this one, but there's been a couple of Marvel-related stories this week, for example, where one outlet saying, we can guarantee this is happening, and somebody more credible than them's came out and said, no, that's crap. You know, and that could have been the case back in the day, because it was a different world back in sort of 2012. Yeah, we had the internet, but, you know, we weren't quite as social media savvy or all online, certainly, as we are now, you know, in 2021. You know, I certainly wasn't writing about movies at that point, or certainly not doing it on a professional level. Yeah, it was different days, and we just don't know if that is a genuine rumour or not. However, just the idea of those words, Zack Snyder's Star Wars, horrifies me.
Look,
beyond doubt. You know,
I liked Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I love it, actually.
I haven't seen that, actually, so you know, I'm not going to pass comment on that, because I haven't seen it. I've seen most of his films, I think, but I've never seen that one.
He reminds me of directors like Michael Bay and George Lucas that have a particular talent, and they're really good with that one thing and nothing else. And they have to...
If you put those people together, you'd maybe have the ultimate action director.
Fucking director.
Because what Lucas was good at was editing, which Snyder is so bad at editing, you know, and Lucas was really good at that. You know, that was, you know, obviously the first one he did with his wife, who was an editor, who divorced, no longer worked on it, but you know, that was, even hearing back in the days, that was one of the things where he kind of really came into his own, was once it got to the cutting room time. So yeah, you know, you never know, mix all three of them together and you might have someone like Steven Spielberg in his prime, you know, who really had all of that.
The problem I think is that we've glorified directors these days in movies, and completely ignored how much goes into making a movie come to life.
Some directors were glorified in the old days, but they were the legends, you know. So the Hitchcocks, the Scorseses, the Coppolas, Spielbergs. But you know, there was a million directors that we know, geeks know, but other people just wouldn't know them off the top of their head.
And
you know?
Those last three those were, you know, the first two especially were the beginning of those superstar directors that became household
70s
names.
Brat Pack
Exactly.
kind of thing,
And because of that, studios start yes-manning or yes-womaning, whatever, be politically correct. They just start yesing these people and rubber stamping, because if you put Chris Nolan's name on it, if you back in the day put Mel Gibson's name on it,
that's
it
somebody
would sell.
that deserves it, you know, because Nolan has earned that reputation. What I don't get, this is going back to J.J. Abrams again, because Snyder's a different argument, but I don't get why Abrams is like the current Spielberg, that he gets his name on everything. If he says go on a project, it's basically green lit. I mean, he's making money just by
putting his
you
name.
know, his ideas being with a particular studio at the moment. And out of all the things that he's done, and I think I've seen everything that he's done, or every mainstream thing he's done, the only decent movie I really, really liked was The Force Awakens. and I had a lot of issues with that, but The Force Awakens did have a lot of good moments in it. And it was a fun movie, and I thought, that's better than I thought from him, because I was really worried about him being given the role in the first place, because I didn't like really any of his other films. And I watched every season of Alias, which was the one he was most heavily involved in, TV series wise. I am a fan of Lost, but he really didn't get involved beyond the first season of that. That was really Carlton Cuse and Damon Lindelof.
The people that he left behind, that had his vision in mind and his influence in mind, have said that it was, I think ABC, that was like, no, you're not ending it at, they wanted season 4 or 5, I think it was, or 3 maybe. And
I think the idea was to kind of end it. But actually, I think once they kind of got into it, I think they found that sometimes it took them that long anyway. But that's an argument for a different time, because I'm actually a fan of Lost these days. Yeah, I wasn't at first, but like in a rewatch, I realised it all does make sense now. But anyway, the only thing that I could have said I really enjoyed that from start to finish that Abrams was involved in was Fringe. At that point, now, how involved, I know his name was on it, Fringe from J.J. Abrams, but he wasn't directing it. He wasn't, as far as I know, he was just exec producer. I think they had a writing room, so I don't know how much his writing was involved. So, I could be wrong, and I don't want to kind of do him that disservice in case I say there's nothing he liked, and actually I did like Fringe, and I thought it ended really well also. But I just don't get what he's done that puts him in that Chris Nolan pedestal, for example. I mean, J.J. Abrams is probably worth more money than Chris Nolan, and I just think it's chalk and cheese, man. Do you know what I mean? I think, one is far more gifted than the other to me. I mean, I think J.J. Abrams is a decent enough director, but I'm not particularly a fan of his writing. I'm not, in all honesty.
I mean, we could spend all day picking,
and you could rate every director.
And so, like I said, like you said about Lost, Lost gets a lot of flack for the way it ended, whether or not you liked it. After
most of that is because people didn't understand it, though.
But regardless, like you said, in reality, that even though his name's on it, that wasn't his story anymore. It wasn't his doing. You know. I'm on with you now. I'm like, the sequel trilogy happened. It exists. We might see it become a more coherent, better story through additional things from Disney Plus, or maybe even comics or novels. Highly fucking unlikely, but maybe. But regardless, so Star Wars still has a billion other planets to visit, and I think that's what's becoming most frustrating to me. Is I'm really waiting on the new Star Wars that we all thought we might get, and we haven't got. Like, okay, a new planet, sure, but you still made it all desert, or made it all ice, or made it, whatever. It's like, fuck, guys. Like, time.
Yeah, I think The Mandalorian showed more imagination on that front, even than, and using the volume instead of big budget movie effects as well, and done a better job than anything that happened in the sequel trilogy. I mean, the sequel trilogy, it looks good, but planets, is there any planets you just off the top of your head, apart from for bad reasons, remember the name of? Do you remember the name of that jungle planet that they're on? I don't, Maz Kanata's place. I don't remember the name of that. I don't remember the name of the planet that the Starkiller base was on. The only planet I can name
Starkiller
off
base
the top
was
of my
Ilum.
head. Right, you go. The only one I can name off the top of my head is Crate, and that's because that whole part should have been cut out the fucking film. Everything that happened in Crate was not Crate. No, what's the other? What's the casino planet called?
Cantobite. There you go.
I remember in Crate because it's where the final thing.
And those are
it was
bad
just
reasons,
Hoth,
like you said.
But we
name
saw
a planet
bad
that you
reasons.
remember for good
for good
or
reasons.
just because it was
can't,
there, and it's like, okay, start going through the original trilogy. You're like, Dan Tatooine's mentioned, Alderaan seen and mentioned, Tatooine. You're
Alderaan that we never actually saw inside the atmosphere was still cooler and more memorable than anything we saw. Do you remember the name of the planets that got blew up by the Starkiller base? Because there was no tension in that, like there was in that Alderaan scene. They make a point
of what that planet is and who it's important to.
And the whole point, I imagine, blowing up a whole planet, whereas it kind of just feels like, they blew up 3 this time. I guess those planets were important, So as much as I say, I quite enjoyed The Force Awakens. What it was missing was, and we've went over this before, is that background that puts it all together, the world building that makes you fall in love with the details. Just wasn't there in the sequel trilogy. But at least one thing we can be thankful of is that we won't be getting Zack Snyder's Star Wars anytime soon. Although we may get a fair idea if he ever gets to make that film, which I hope someone ponies up the cash and lets him make it. Then it'd be interesting to see, because all you're going to do is you're going to watch that and go, would this have worked in Star Wars? Do you know what I mean? Because you're going to know what it is, I think, if he ever develops that. But who knows whether that will actually come to fruition at some point or not. We don't know. Zack Snyder fans will hope it does because they just want to see what he's going to do next. But he's going to get work, so Zack Snyder's going to work. So it's just you just need to wait for whatever he's coming up with next. If you're a big Zack Snyder fan, because he ain't done.
Nope, he's not. But this episode of the Cantina is, and with that, you guys, please make sure you're checking out LRM Online, LRMonline.com every day for all of your entertainment news, needs, and opinions. Check out our outstanding YouTube channel full of awesome podcasts like the Daily Cup of Genre, Daily Cog, which is what LR Mornings used to be, Anime Versal Reviews with Dr. Stone this weekend, Saturday. Awesomeness. Can't wait to talk about that. There's also Breaking Geek Radio, the podcast, so much more, and of course all the amazing celebrity interviews that we get every day, it seems like. And of course all of our podcasts and shows are available in audio format wherever you get your podcasts from, probably where you're listening to this right now if you're not on YouTube. So like, share, follow, subscribe, all that wonderful stuff. It can be found at that Kyle Malone on Twitter. Cam, what do you got going on, and where can people find you at?
Obviously, if you check out the website every day, we'll be trying to cover all the rumours, all the news that breaks, especially for the big brands such as your Marvel, Star Wars, DC stuff, as well. The stuff that most people are interested in. Loads of kind of fantasy stuff coming out as well. But you can find me on Twitter at LRM_Cam.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Let us know if there's something in particular you would like us to talk about. We're open for all sorts of really cool ideas, not just in the Star Wars realm, but anything you think we're not covering on the site, let us know. Thank you guys so much for listening this week. We'll talk to you next time. May the Force be with you.